Greetings and welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. I'm Phyllis Hollis, your host. As an extension of my Instagram page, Cerebral Women, this podcast offers insights into the visual art world. I interview artists, mainly artists of color and female artists who will freely articulate what inspires their creativity. In addition, you'll hear interesting perspectives from dedicated art professionals who work with artists and the art institutions that feature them. I'm confident that collectively, these individuals will indeed stimulate your mind as they do our eyes. Please know these interviews are conducted in my Manhattan apartment, so please forgive the background sounds of city life. Welcome to the Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. This episode features New York City-based abstract painter Erika Ranee. She is the recipient of a New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship in Painting in 1996 and 2021, an AIM Fellowship from the Bronx Museum, and was granted artist residence at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture, as well as a resident at Airspace Abrams Art Center. Her work has been featured throughout the New York region in group exhibitions at the Southampton Arts Center, at Project Room, to name a few. In 2019, she exhibited in her first international show at Wild Palms in Dusseldorf, Germany. An encore international group show took place in Paris at the Brigitte Mulholland Gallery in the summer of 2024. Other selected group shows include the Landing Gallery in Los Angeles, Hollis Taggart Gallery in Southport, Connecticut, and Venus over Manhattan in New York City. In the summer of 2024, her work was featured in a solo venture at Moss Arts Center in Blacksburg, Virginia. She has been selected by guest co-curator artist Jeffrey Gibson to participate in the upcoming 200th anniversary exhibition at the Bronx Museum in the fall of 2024. Her work has been reviewed in the New York Times and Artforum. Erika received her MFA in painting from the University of California, Berkeley. Enjoy this episode featuring Erika Ranee, and please visit cerebralwomen.com for her expanded bio. Erika, welcome to my podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
And thank you for having me. I'm excited about this.
When did you discover your artistic passion?
Let's see. My passion for it didn't start until late. I was a late bloomer, so to speak. I was at Wesleyan University for undergrad, and I was a government major. And my first semester senior year, I decided to study abroad in Paris. I took courses towards my government major, but I also decided to take a little side class at Parsons, a painting class, and had never painted before. And the professor taught us all how to build our paintings from scratch. I mean, we had to assemble the wooden stretchers, stretch the canvas, then we primed it with rabbit skin glue, which is very old school. Then we made our own oil paints. We ground the pigments and added the oil and found tubes to put them in the tubes. And after I'd completed my painting at the end of the semester, I was so thrilled with this thing that I'd created from the ground up. And that was it. I was hooked. So I go back to Wesleyan, finish up my degree, my government major degree with a concentration in public policy. And all my dreams of taking the LSAT and going to law school just got sidetracked as I decided to go to art school after graduating from Wesleyan. So I went to SVA. I would say, though, that the germ of my creativity did show its face at a younger age. My grandmother, she taught me how to sew and knit and needlepoint. And my Aunt Renee, my namesake, she is only 6 years older than I, so she was sort of like a big sister to me, my mother's youngest sister. And she did batik. And what else did she? Oh, we would share notes on macrame. So I was very much into the craft world at a young age. And that just, I was passionate about that. I was always making things once I learned how to do it. And sometimes she would draw and I would just, copy everything she did. I would just try to draw as well. But I never was that kid who would sit around drawing and making things all day long. I also wanted to be a scientist. As a kid, I would wander into the woods looking for birds' nests, abandoned birds' nests, and bugs. And I wanted to be an entomologist or an ornithologist. That was my childhood dream, aside from being an Olympic swimmer. That was my other dream to do that. But yeah, I knew when I look back, I was like, okay, it was there, but I just didn't think of it as a lifelong dream until I went to Paris and took that class. Then I came back and I knew, wow, okay, this is what I want to try to do. So I did 2.5 years at SVA. They accelerated my degree because I had credits. I'd take little crafty classes at Wesleyan and then headed off to Berkeley for grad school. And I still didn't know what I was doing because the classes I took at SVA, they weren't great, but it gave me an idea. I had two good professors who were teaching me the basics, and Marilyn Minter was one, and Stephen Westfall. He that was like the first time I used oil paint. So that's when things started.
Do you recall if there was a particular body of work or artist that really influenced you early on?
Yes. My parents collected a lot of work from the Harlem Renaissance and other Black artists. Bob Thompson is not part of the Harlem Renaissance, but his paintings, that stood out for me as a kid. And Charles White. There was a lot of Charles and a lot of Bob all around the house. Elizabeth Catlett, too. I took it for granted, I was just walking around with all this great art on the wall at home, but I was always staring at them. I would always go back to them. There was, in fact, a Charles White etching that was life-size when I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. It's a Black girl, and I was about the same size as this girl in the picture, and she had a little afro like I did, and I would just stare at her and relate to her. She was like my little buddy. But then I would, as I'm staring at her, I'm thinking, how did he make her eyes pop so clearly? And her skin had this beautiful sheen to it, and this was just in black and white, and I could just feel everything about that figure come to life. And I was amazed by that. That's when I started to connect the dots that someone made this. This came from something within their mind. And this is how creativity works. And Bob Thompson, I love color. He's one of the best colorists, I think, out there. And I love how he broke down the figure so it was a little bit flatter. Then he's using these flat colors and oranges and reds. And these are like almost cutout figures in many of them. But you could see the strife, even though I might not have understood what was going on at such a young age. There are certain things in there that maybe are more confusing to a child. But I could relate. I just felt this power within the composition and the narratives. And so that got the ball rolling. I was never into sculpture, but Elizabeth Catlett's forms were just so beautiful in their simplicity. There was so much to behold in those simple forms. And the materials, like the wood pieces and all that finish in there. There's a lot of work going on in there. I never pursued sculpture, though, but...
How do you define your practice?
I'm a painter, an abstract painter. I think I would say I'm a head and heart painter. So I started off figurative in grad school. I just wanted to address things that were really poignant to me at the time. I was in grad school in 1991 and 1993. And back then, all the Black artists, we were addressing a lot of sociopolitical issues in our work. And for me, it was about dealing with Black stereotypes, as many of us were also dealing with it. I think Renee Cox, Ellen Gallagher, I mean, we were all dealing with those issues in our work. So I found it interesting. I was pulled in a specific direction to research Black stereotypes and the atrocious images that were created by white people as propaganda to create these ideas around Black people as idiots, as dangerous, as passive. And I thought, the nerve. So I bought these books with all the images, Disney, Warner Brothers, all these animators. I went down that rabbit hole, and I would take those images and just recreate a more perverse narrative for these stereotypes, usually attacking the source. And that was something I needed to do. I needed to get it out of my system. But then I moved to New York and things were really picking up. So this is probably around 1993. I went to Skowhegan. I was still doing that. And that's where I actually met Ellen Gallagher. We were kind of doing the same things. We were doing these things about Mickey Mouse. It was really weird that we were both addressing that same topic at the same time. And we're the same age. So we bonded on that. But of course, Ellen's career just took off and running. And I thought, okay, I got to put Mickey Mouse aside because this is being addressed on a wider spectrum with Ellen's work. But the change for me came when 1997, I lost my brother to a random murder. And the person who did it was an 18-year-old Russian immigrant a white kid who was, basically indoctrinated to hate once he moved to America. And I thought, I've had enough of this dealing with racism in my work. It's just too close to home. And it was too painful. And then I had an epiphany, like, I don't want to spend my life making art addressing white hatred, white aggression, white horribleness towards Black people. I don't want to spend my career doing that. And I admire the artists who can, because that stuff just wipes you out. It is draining, and that compounded with the loss of my brother, I was done. I was done with art, actually. I took what turned into a 9-year hiatus from making, because I lived with my brother at the time of his death, and he was like my little art cheerleader, and that was just hard to wrap my mind around. So for those 9 years, I just did things that were unrelated.
Do you listen to music while you're working?
I used to just listen to music all the time. And, I would look at paintings that were completed and I knew exactly where Miles Davis kind of blue was happening, like I listened to slower music towards the end of the painting. In the beginning of the painting, it's high speed action because I'm pouring, I'm spraying, I'm working on large scale paintings and it's very physical and I'm stretching out. I'm sometimes balancing on one foot. And so I need high energy music. So that will be something with a fast beat like Charlie Bird or Jimi Hendrix or some kind of loud, fast something. And then in the middle, when I have to slow down, the music will slow down. I'll need to listen to something kind of chill. Because it's hours of tiny brush work. But, it's weird. In the past year, I haven't wanted to listen to any music at all. I don't want to hear voices, nothing. And my studio's by the BQE, and I'm just used to this rhythm of hearing the trucks and cars pass by. And then they put this weird metal shield. They're repairing this area right out in front of my studio. So you hear this ba-boom, ba-boom. But it's like a beat. So I don't know. I think I've settled on that. And when I need a little noise, I do have still listen to CDs. I don't do any kind of streaming, but I'll listen to my CDs of bird songs and with no music, nothing, just the birds. I have this Buddhist chant CD that my high school roommate gave me 50 years ago that I love. It's just this pure sound of these deep, deep voices. And then I even found a CD of didgeridoos, those Australian instruments that the indigenous people use. It's a beautiful sound. So it's got to be a pure sound for me now. And I don't know what this phase is I'm going through.
When do you know work is finished?
That's my problem. I think I can count on one hand how many times I've looked at a painting and thought, I'm done. I'm the worst. So I have two helpers, my two good friends who are my quote unquote civilian friends. They're not artists, but they know me well, and they are painfully honest sometimes. If I send them an image like, I don't know, I just feel like something's off, or they might be more specific. And I take that into consideration. I feel that they have good eyes for my work. So I turn to my crew when I'm at a loss, especially once I started making abstract work. I was just like, what is happening here? Like, I can turn this around 4 times and still not know which is strongest. So it does take a little work to figure out.
And when during the creative process do you come up with the title?
Sometimes I'll have a title. I watch old movies. I'm an old movie addict. I grew up watching them. 1930s, 1940s, it's my favorite period. But the writing in there is so good that it's a great source for my titles. So sometimes when I'm watching an old movie, I'll write down these titles, or I'll be walking down the street and I hear someone say something funny and I'll write that down. So I have a list on my phone of title possibilities. But sometimes I will get a title. It'll come to me as I'm making the work. But I just like to let it unfurl in an organic way. I mean, if I'm stuck, then I turn to the list. But I like to have it happen when I'm looking at the painting and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, that's it. That's a good one.
Do you feel Black art can be defined?
I don't. I mean, I think it's a challenge to try to define or categorize Black art because we aren't a monolith. We are so many different voices saying so many different things, and all of them are coming from Black people. So the art is coming from our Blackness, but some address it more directly and outwardly than others. And I think that by fact that I'm a Black woman making this work, my Blackness and my womanhood is coming out. It's not going to be clearly defined for the viewer. Maybe it will be. I like to leave my work open to interpretation, open to someone's projection of ideas and feelings. I like to leave it open-ended like that because my process is personal to me and the moment that I'm living in and creating. Every layer is coming from a specific thought or feeling of that day, of that hour. And I don't even remember half the time what I was thinking as I'm building it. The important part is it's a means to an end. Like I need to have something to think about in order to make the work. But my work has it all in there. And one of my professors at SVA was Jack Whitten, who's an abstract artist. And he didn't tell us this in class. It didn't apply to me anyway, because I didn't know what I was doing back then, and I was working more representationally. But he, in an interview, I'm poorly paraphrasing this, but basically he said, look, I'm a Black man, I'm a Black person. The messages, the politics, the ideas, it's all in there because I made it, and it's all in there. You don't have to see it. You don't have to read it. It's just know that it's in there. And it was in his titles too. The titles could tell you a lot.
Have you ever been asked what's Black about your art because there's no Black figures?
Right. Well, for me, I like to address nature and I like to address my experience being in the city. And I think that my energy, my love for color, I mean, if I'm going to specify things, which that even makes me uncomfortable because then I'm starting to categorize and define. But I think we should all be free to make the work how we want to make it. I mean, if you're a Black artist and you don't want to be Black, that's a whole different story. But that work and that approach would still come out like made by Black artists. You can't run from that. You can't hide if you wanted to. I don't want to hide from that. I want to bring another voice to the mainstream audience. And in the art world, it's going to be predominantly white and to address audience issues. But I would like to say, hey, look, Black artists make abstract work and have been for decades. I mean, abstraction started with African art. So it goes way back into our ancient heritage. And this is the stuff that later on, of course, artists like Picasso would steal from it. And, you have Cubism coming out of that abstraction that they stole from African art. So I'm not doing anything new. I just think it's still rather new to the art world to see this approach to express ourselves. And of course, African art was addressing more ritualistic things. It wasn't for someone to buy and put on the wall, But now I'm making work that ideally does end up on a wall, and it's just something that's another Black voice, another way that Black people express themselves.
What are you excited about right now?
I curated a show recently out in East Hampton at the Art Center at Duck Creek. And since I had a lot of work, I decided to make some small paintings at home. And I did start working at home during COVID. We were doing a lot of works on paper, but I decided to get little canvases this time. And now my apartment has turned into a second studio. It used to be a comfortable living space, but it's a little crazy now. But I'm excited about what's happening here because the work, I'm limited with my materials. I put everything but the kitchen sink into my paintings. And I don't have access to all of that medium and materials. I just have ink here. And it's forcing me to be more creative. I don't have all of my things. It's very minimal what's available to me. And I'm keeping it that way intentionally. Speaking of my love for film, there was this director, Lars von Trier. He did some really painful films about women suffering, Breaking the Waves. And then there was one with Bjork, which I forgot the name of that. But he challenged his peers to follow very basic rules of filmmaking. And it was called Dogma 95. So he made like a small list of rules, and you couldn't, I think one was using a handheld camera only, don't use special effects, blah, blah, blah. So they were all forced to follow this very small, minimalist list of how to approach making a film. And I feel like I'm doing that here at home. And in a way, it's challenging me to be more creative with fewer things. And I think in a way, it's helping me with the bigger stuff in the studio. Like I have more confidence with my line work and my color work because of what I'm forced to focus on here at home. So that's exciting to me right now. I haven't taken that approach before, and I think it's a good challenge.
What's your process of choosing color?
It's, I have like a rotating collection of colors that are left over from previous bodies of work. So there are my staples. Like I love this particular ultramarine blue. I have to stop myself from using hot pinks and everything. And red, I mean, that's my thing. So I'll always have a little bit of that in there, plus black. I have this black gouache that dries like black velvet, which reminds me of those blacklight posters from the 70s. My uncle used to have those. I love those. So I like bringing that. I always have that available, but then everything else just sort of, I'll just grab the leftover paint from the previous body of work and just throw it down on the canvas. And I have no plan for, it's very willy-nilly. It's like, okay, just go on the canvas, just get this down. And often some of those colors get muddy, or I'll even use the dirty water that I was cleaning the brushes with, and that creates beautiful neutral colors just to offset all the brightness. So I'll start with pouring like that, and then I'll see where the painting's going. Is it more of a blue tone? Is it more of a green tone, an earthy tone? And I'll just follow that. That's like my guideline. And then I'll mix, my other colors. But I do have to catch myself not to mix too much of the same, because I love those too much. And otherwise I have a whole room of purple, purple paintings. And it's all from my gut, what I'm feeling.
I've really enjoyed our conversation. And believe it or not, this is the last question. It's a two-part question. What do you feel is the purpose of art? And as an artist, what is your role?
I think for my own art, I want anyone who needs a little break from all of the death and destruction in the world to get a respite, maybe a little resting place. Now, my work isn't all about joy. There's a lot of pain and maybe anger, but there's laughter and there's joyousness and there's richness, I hope, being imparted to the viewer from my work. So I think art is important in getting people to think about things maybe a little differently than they've ever thought about things, just to open up the way they see the world. That can help on so many levels of your life to be able to do that. I cannot imagine a school without art being offered. I think that is the purpose of us, to bring these different viewpoints and to inform people if that's what we want to do. Art has so many different possibilities. You can use it as outreach. You can use it as a personal message. You can use it as activism. And you can use it as just pure viewing pleasure or interest. That's what's important to me. And I think we need it to balance out everything else that's going on in our lives that doesn't allow for that kind of freedom to interpret the world or to feel expression or relate to your ideas.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the work you do.
Thank you, Phyllis. That was easier than I thought.
Thank you for listening to Cerebral Women Art Talks podcast. For additional content, please visit cerebralwomen.com and be sure to follow Cerebral Women on Instagram.